Hi guys, good
Hi,
morning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, indeed.
Welcome to 10 to 13. I'm Joe, and
I'm Zubin.
today we're going to be talking about book reviews. Okay, so to begin, Zubin, if you want to read.
Yeah, okay. So in this focus activity, talking about book preferences, that's like a type of genre, the type of style of book you prefer, a language to describe literature, and writing a book review.
Okay, yes, we won't be doing any writing today,
No.
but you're more than welcome to comment and share any interesting books you're reading with us, and we will pick up those comments. So, first of all,
Okay, so what's your favorite type of book and why?
Okay, so there's many different. Hi, Alice.
Hi, Alice. Nice
Welcome.
To meet
Yeah. There are many different types of book, aren't there?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So, what do you typically read, Jay?
I like to think I read a big variety. At the moment, I'm very interested in historical fiction.
Historical fiction, nice. I haven't read much historical fiction. Is there an author you particularly like?
At the moment, someone from Myes, fantastic. Someone I am reading at the moment is an English author called Rose Tremaine, and she has written a very diverse collection of books, but this one is a historical.
Yeah, she does read. She writes a lot of historical fiction, I think.
And I think it's always very nice to find something that shows you a period of history and a moment in history at a very close level. It's very, very interesting. How about you, Zubin? What books do you prefer?
So I think I mentioned to you last week, I'm reading some ghost stories at the moment. Alice said she's reading an adventure book. Okay. What type of adventure book, Alice? Is it a fiction book?
I can't remember the last time I read an adventure book, but they are very enjoyable.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. It's yeah. I remember when I was younger, I used to read a lot of adventure style books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what have we got? Adventure books, ghost stories, historical fiction.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any types of book you don't like?
I don't like. I don't read much science fiction.
Science fiction.
Yeah. Not usually thrillers. Occasionally thrillers.
Okay.
How about you?
I think I agree that sometimes science fiction is very, I would say, hit and miss. Hit and miss.
Hit and miss. Yeah, good expression. Yeah. Sometimes it works for you. Sometimes not so.
Very good. So Alicia said, Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Yeah, very good series.
Very good series. Both. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What do we say there? Adventure books.
Adventure. I don't know. Lord of the Rings has elements of adventure.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
But probably both of them belong to
fantasy. Yeah.
Fantasy genre.
So you say they're typically more fantasy fiction rather than adventure.
Yes.
They contain adventure. I think adventure books are more traditional, set in real life.
Yep.
But with someone who travels to a different country, does exciting activities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very good. Often I find people are confused between fantasy and science fiction. That's a common confusion I've seen.
Yes.
What would you say are the big differences?
Yeah, there's the main differences. So science fiction is usually in space.
Yeah.
And the plot revolves around technology.
Yes.
Something to do with science.
Futuristic in some way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's look at some other genres.
Okay.
So, in fiction, we have
romance novels, crime fiction, fantasy, the classics, sci-fi, horror, historical fiction, and spy thrillers.
Okay. So some of these we mentioned already.
Yep.
Of this list, Subin, which do you prefer?
Having probably classics. Yeah, it's just because it satisfies my pretentiousness, I suppose.
Very good. Okay.
How about you, Jack? What's your favourite genre?
I like to think I know the classics, but sometimes I struggle with the classics.
It's a lot of having to remember names to sound intelligent.
Yes. Yeah. Many different characters. Which was the last classic you read?
The last classic I read. Maybe an E.M. Forster.
Okay.
E.M. Forster. A Room with a View. I read actually at the end of last year.
Very good book.
Yeah. You know.
I read at university.
Okay. Well,
thank
you, Sheila.
Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, fantastic. So,
hi, Francesca.
Hi, Francesca. So, fiction books we've spoken about, but the other type of book would be.
So, fiction is a book with a story, with a plot, not based on real life. Does anyone know the opposite of fiction?
Opposite of fiction. I tend to read almost exclusively fiction, I think. But Sheila says she's reading the new Silk Road.
I've heard about that.
Geopolitical book.
So I think that book, the same author wrote a book 2 years ago called The Silk Roads, about the history of the Silk Roads 500, 600 years ago. The new Silk Roads is about, I think, the trade between the West and East. So it's more, geopolitical. Maybe a niche genre, unusual genre.
Very interesting. And that would be, we would describe as a non-fiction.
As a non-fiction book, right.
So
non-fiction includes historical books, philosophy, science, arts, archaeology, biographies, autobiographies, travel writing.
Very good.
Joe, what's the difference between biographies, autobiographies?
A very good question, Zubin. So, autobiography would be written by the person who is the subject of the book.
Right. So it's almost like an extended diary entry.
Yes, in a way. Yeah.
Right.
Telling about their life, about their experience.
Biography, it's more another person writing about that person's life.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the past, I used to prefer autobiographies. I thought they were interesting. But now I think biographies are better because a person is very subjective about their own life, whereas a biography can maybe reveal some things they wouldn't talk about.
Yeah. I think the value of an autobiography is very dependent on the honesty of the author.
Absolutely. And Alice says, in the past at school, she preferred the classics.
Yeah. Which in Italy, I don't know, I Promessi Sposi.
I don't know.
I've got a copy in my room.
Fantastic.
Similar library.
Any particular favourite classic, Alice? Please do comment. Of the non-fiction genres, Zubin, do you read non-fiction?
I do read some non-fiction, yeah. So I've just finished a book on the East India Company, which was a trading company in India. That was a historical book. Okay, so yeah, perfect, Alicia. So Divina Commedia, Divine Comedy in English. Yeah, definite, obvious, famous Italian classic.
In fact, in my apartment, in my room, which we are now in, my landlord has left behind maybe 6 or 7 versions of Divina Commedia.
Yeah,
very good.
I've taken one of them. I think.
Yeah,
I now also have a room with. Yeah, I think the Divine Comedy. Yeah, lots of those books.
And I think for us, to read in Italian is particularly difficult, but I am enjoying the illustrations.
Gustave Doré.
Yes, incredible. Very good. Really good. Yeah, as I say, I tend not to read much non-fiction, but occasionally maybe a scientific book or something, some philosophy.
Scientific book? That's interesting. What scientific books do you read?
Last summer, I read a book called The Sixth Extinction, and about all different times that over the history of the world that different species have become extinct.
Oh, wow.
And now apparently we are in the sixth extinction.
Yeah.
But yes.
Okay.
So an interesting book. A little bit depressing.
But it's important sometimes to be depressed in the right way.
Yeah.
If you're taking action.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you.
I think yes, to stay informed is always good.
Definitely.
Okay. So now let's look.
Okay.
Interesting quotation from Alan Bennett.
Alan Bennett. Who's Alan Bennett? Yeah.
Alan Bennett is a favourite writer of mine. Actually, he's an English playwright. A playwright, a writer of theatre pieces. And
this quote here from the History Boys. History Boys, is that one of his plays?
History Boys, yeah, one of his most famous plays, set at a school of very intelligent young students, just coming up to the end of their school career, ready to go to university. Very interesting play.
Okay, nice. I think it was adapted into a film.
Yes.
So if you can't go to the play, you can find the film somewhere.
And the film is fantastic. It's a very good selection of now very famous British actors at the start of their career.
Yeah.
And James Corden.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so here's a quote. The best moments in reading are when you come across something, a thought, a feeling, a way of looking at things, which you had thought special and particular to you. And now, here it is, set down by someone else, a person you have never met, someone even who is long dead. And it is as if a hand has come out and taken yours.
Wow. It's a very nice quote, very nice quotation.
A very beautiful illustration of the power of reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think I agree. Those are the best moments when you're reading, to find some kind of parallel thinking.
Particularly when you're reading older books. So you can't really comprehend their time. There's no color photographs. But when you read a book written 100, 200 years ago, you think, wow, these people did think in a similar way.
Yeah, I think it's very reassuring to, especially some kind of difficulty, some kind of emotional problem, to see that this has always been the case.
Yeah, true. Yeah, if anyone has any opinions on the quote or on reading, please comment.
Yeah,
of course.
Absolutely. I would love to hear any experiences like that. Okay. And yes, let's look at this question. So
okay. Yes. So for you, what makes a book a good read? What makes a book exceptional? Have you ever read a book which made you feel that a hand has come out and taken yours? So I suppose, thinking now about specific books, do you have a book that's really caught you, Jane?
I think the example I always think of is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte.
I've never read that.
It's something in sixth form, which in England is similar to in Italy the last 2 years of high school, so just before university. In sixth form, we were obliged to read Wuthering Heights, and sometimes that is not the best way to discover a book, to be obliged to read it.
No, right.
But it caught me at a fantastic just moment of teenage angst. And turbulence.
Nice.
So it was very very interesting. Yeah. And exactly like we were saying, that a good view of someone from another century having exactly the same thoughts and feelings as you in the modern day. Very, very reassuring to see.
Yeah, beautiful. I think, also similar, it's not really a book, but a passage from a book, from A Mill on the Floss by George Eliot.
Very nice.
There's one passage there. She had a rural upbringing, so she was brought up in the countryside, which I was as well, and she was describing about just the place where she grew up and how it's these little things which make you nostalgic, make you love a place. And it wasn't related to the story. It was just like an additional thing.
That's very
which
nice.
She wanted to write. Yeah. And I thought it was very beautiful.
Wow. That's brilliant. Very good. Okay. In general, Zubin, what do you think makes a good read? What makes you continue?
A good read. So important things about a fiction book would be good character. More important than a plot for me. Good character, so you can engage with the person.
Yeah.
You can imagine what it's like to be them. You have sympathy or empathy for them. Yeah. So for me, the most important thing, good character.
Okay. Well-defined characters.
Yeah. Or people you want to, who feel real enough that you want to know what happens to them.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, I think that's very true. Very nice. I think for me, I would say description can go a long way to give a very vivid description that puts you in the world always makes me want to continue. If I can really picture
I think
places.
Descriptions of landscapes aren't appreciated as much these days. A lot of modern fiction seems to be about just taking everything away, so stripping the text, so it's all everything relates to a character, or there's not much around
I think
around the story.
Absolutely. I think it can be very disappointing when you're reading a book and it says and he went into a cafe, and it tells you nothing about the cafe. It's just your sort of stock image of a cafe that you have to produce.
You must imagine. No, why should the reader do the work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and do comment, guys, telling us what you think is a good read for you. So, some phrases let's look at now, related to reading and different types of response.
Okay, so these phrases you can all use in relation to reading. So I suppose they're idiomatic. So the first one, I couldn't put it down. What does that mean, Joe?
So I couldn't put it down when I'm reading a book and I simply can't stop reading the book. It's so good.
So to put it down is a phrasal verb. What does it mean? So
to demonstrate, if I hold up my pad and I put it down.
So that's put down. Couldn't put it down. It's in your hand. All the time.
I can't let go. This book isn't so interesting. But
we should have had the Divine Comedy.
Actually.
Next one. I was hooked. Similar.
Yeah, I would say very similar.
What does the verb mean, to hook?
So to hook, to capture, often used for fishing.
For fishing, So a hook is the little, you might know Captain Hook with his hand.
Captain Hook.
So a hook is anything like this, which you can use to attach something to. Usually, like Joe said, for fishing.
So it's like when you're reading and you've been captured by the book.
So the book has hooked you.
Yes. Absolutely.
And you can't escape.
Page turner.
Page turner. So to turn the page, to turn is the verb we use for when you move the page. So if it's a page turner, it means you keep on. It means you love the book. It's not saying you turn the page because you want to finish, but because you keep on reading it very fast.
It's sort of similar again to couldn't put it down. You keep going, you can't stop. Yes. And Elite, it's a bestseller. Is the book that sells now. A bestseller, Zubin? What is a bestseller?
So a bestseller. So you're right. It's a book that's selling now. Generally, we can talk about a bestseller. Well, actually, a bestseller, it can be from any time, can't it? It's
the most sold.
So we can talk about a book which doesn't sell much now, but in the past sold a lot.
Many copies sold.
So
it's a bestseller.
It's just a difference with the verb, the type of to be you use. So it is a bestseller. It's selling now. It was a bestseller.
Yes. And often newspapers will make lists of bestsellers, like the New York Times has a bestseller list of the year.
And then Francesca's commented, an avid reader. is someone that reads a lot. Yeah,
Exactly,
perfect.
yeah.
That's exactly what an avid reader is.
Very.
Are you an avid reader, Joe?
I like to think so,
Mm-hmm.
but I have periods where I am and periods where I'm not.
Yeah, yeah. As I go through, sometimes I find myself reading a book, and I think actually, now's not the day.
Yes, yeah.
I think an avid reader would be someone who really can't stop. They need to be reading every day.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel very envious of these people, and things like I read 2 or 3 books a week, and I think that's impossible.
Yeah, so it's true. An avid reader, someone who loves reading, but also someone who reads very fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So finally, to look at just moving and gripping. Yes, moving or gripping. What is the difference there?
So moving is more emotional. So if it moves you, then it affects you in some way. Maybe you feel sad. You feel nostalgic.
Yep.
It's more similar to I was hooked.
Yeah, so I would say gripping, maybe a thriller.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving. Any books that have moved you, Zubin?
Any books that moved me? I think I'm too coldly unemotional for that. I'm sure there have been. Well, so A Room with a View I mentioned earlier. It's a love story. It's almost like the film is a kind of rom-com.
Okay.
But it's very good. I love that story. I think it's a very beautiful romance.
Fantastic. Okay, yeah. So I think generally I'm very often moved, and it may be too much, and it almost every kind of romance where somebody dies or anything like that, I'm very easily moved. Almost takes away.
It's good. No, I think that shows you've got some imagination there. If you feel something which isn't real, it's because you're imagining it.
I suppose so. Yeah.
Something to be proud of.
Are there any books that you think are gripping?
Any books I think are gripping? Would say, what type of genre? What genre would we typically associate with the adjective gripping? It would be a type of fiction.
Yeah, definitely fiction.
Yeah. So a thriller.
A thriller. Yeah.
We'd say it's gripping, I think.
I can imagine maybe a murder mystery as well.
Anything where the plot is the main focus, it's going to be gripping. Yeah. You're going to be wanting to turn the page and discover what happens next.
Yeah, you're waiting for big discoveries.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. I had another genre, a bit of mystery.
Oh, right, okay. I see. I didn't read them.
I think is fun.
Yeah.
What
murder mysteries can you recommend?
I think some of the Sherlock Holmes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Very fun. There's a fun crossover with Sherlock Holmes. The beginning of murder mystery definitely comes from Gothic fiction. So I quite like that transition. Also, detective stories. I like, for example, the American writer Raymond Chandler wrote many of the big noir detective stories. Probably the most famous would be The Big Sleep.
What's a noir detective story?
That's a good question. Usually, it's very stylistic, isn't it? Noir.
Yeah, is it kind of as it's quite minimal, maybe, or it's quite nostalgic for a period, like a 50s, 60s period.
I think the period of noir seems to be any time between 1930, maybe 1960. Often features a very sort of agitated or distressed fatale,
Okay.
and a very cantankerous or very not so happy-go-lucky detective.
Okay. A misery guts.
Yes, you could say a misery guts. Someone who seems to always be miserable.
He's never smiling.
No.
Okay.
And I think what I like about these books are the almost invincible nature of the detective. He can seemingly be knocked out and captured, and then leaves that situation. Happens again the next night.
No.
It's incredible. It's almost fantasy, almost. Yes. So.
Okay.
In general, yes, discussing books.
Okay. So think of a book you have read. Ask each other these questions. So, what is the genre of the book? What point of view was the work written from? From the author? From a protagonist? What was the author's style? Was it formal or informal? Did it suit the intended audience? Were ideas clearly defined? How well did these ideas develop? What has the book accomplished?
Okay, so for your last book, Zubin, what was the genre?
Well, so the book I've just finished reading was this history book. So it wasn't historical fiction, it was a work of non-fiction, so about real events. Yeah, so you'd say it was a historical book.
Yes.
So any historical book, it's going to be written from the author.
Yes. Yeah. And was the style, was that formal, informal?
Definitely formal. Yeah, not too formal. It wasn't for universities. It wasn't academic. But it was it was a proper history book. So not informal.
Very good.
There are expressions we use for a work written from the author's perspective. We say we use a ordinal number, don't we?
Yes. So from the first person.
Yeah. So first person. Is that from the author or from the protagonist?
I suppose it depends, but in the fiction book would be the protagonist.
It would. Yeah. So in fiction, when we talk about first person, that means the I is a fictional character. They're not a real person. They're someone the author invented.
Absolutely.
In third person fiction, there isn't an I.
No. Yeah, so the events are described by the author and shown to us by the third person. So John went to the cafe, etc.
Perfect. Okay. Were ideas clearly defined?
So this was the historical book. Were the ideas clearly defined?
I'm not sure they were as well defined as they could be, because in the epilogue, the author wrote about, he summarized his work, what he thought he was trying to do. I thought it wasn't it didn't feel like that was what he was trying to do all the way through the book. Sometimes I thought it was a different message he was trying to portray.
Interesting. And what has the book accomplished, do you think?
Well, so it was a book on the East India Company. It's certainly brought that to a wider audience, so more people know about it now. I think it's quite a dark period of British colonialism.
Yes, so very dark.
Maybe you can say it's important people know more about that.
Absolutely. I think with all historical fiction, if it is dark, it is important for us to remember the depths of humanity and to avoid. Hi, Daniela. Thanks for watching. Okay. So, talking now, an example of a review. This is 1984 by George Orwell, written in 1948. Very clever, reversed the numbers, and the genre futuristic fiction.
Okay.
Or dystopian fiction.
Well, yeah. Miss you too, Daniel. So, dystopian fiction.
Yes.
What is dystopian fiction?
So, dystopian fiction to present a view of a possible future that is very negative. Maybe in this case, in 1984, that the government and society has become very controlled.
Reminds me of somewhere.
Yes, in fact. So, let's see in this review about 1984.
Okay. So, I liked 1984 even better after a second reading. I thought it was a work of genius the first time and appreciated that genius even more the second time.
Orwell had a daunting task, creating a future nearly half a century away from his own time period. This future had to be its own complex, independent society, but it also had to be the natural end result of the dictatorship Orwell had witnessed firsthand, that is, the communist and socialist regimes of World War II.
Okay. That's part of the horror of 1984. This future is a recognizable one, even in 2010. It's easy to see how those in control can, through manipulation and propaganda, maintain that control simply for the sake of satisfying their own hunger for power. It is both a cautionary tale and a social commentary.
And 1984 is one of those perfect novels that not only entertains, but also forces everyone to consider the dangers associated with giving any one person or entity too much power or control over our lives.
Okay. Now, if there's any vocabulary in there you don't understand, you're unsure of, obviously feel free to ask in the chat.
Let's pick out some key vocabulary. First of all, a daunting task.
Daunting task. Yeah, so a task, a job you need to do. Daunting would be if you feel overwhelmed by something. Yes. You think it's going to be very difficult for you, and it's a struggle to finish.
Absolutely.
So if something's daunting, you're worried about it before you start, but it doesn't mean it's impossible.
Yes, sometimes these are our best tasks to do, to push ourselves beyond our current capabilities.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Okay, so next, a regime.
A regime. So the examples here, the communist and socialist regimes of World War II. Regime is a word used for a controlling government.
It's not a positive word, is it?
Not a positive.
No.
Usually a negative government. For example, the Nazi regime, also in World War II.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're welcome, Francesco.
Yeah. And let's see, what else? Oh, propaganda.
Propaganda. It's a word I learnt when I was 10 or 9. I studied World War II a lot.
Wow.
So propaganda, it's like advertising, but for the government, and generally not very truthful.
Yes.
So it could be posters. Now it might be Facebook adverts, I suppose, but we don't use it much anymore.
No, it's very negative. Again, has always been since World War II very connected with that time propaganda.
Yeah.
I would say some recent examples of propaganda. What would you? Any recent examples?
Recent examples of propaganda.
I think maybe
I don't know.
the red buses of Brexit.
Perhaps.
Possibly. But let's not
get too political.
Yes. Okay.
A cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
What is a cautionary tale, Joe?
So a cautionary tale, something that you should read and then be aware of and change something about your behavior to avoid making the same mistakes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Nice description.
Yeah. So another example of a cautionary tale, often a lot of quite traditional stories are cautionary tales.
Very true. Yeah, a lot of fairy tales are cautionary tales. Hansel and Gretel.
Hansel and Gretel, I was thinking as well.
Stranger danger.
Yes, don't go to houses made of sweets.
Yeah, so it's warning you to be more careful around strangers, I suppose.
Absolutely. To have caution.
Yeah.
In fact, yeah. I'd agree with this review that 1984 is a very powerful novel, and I remember when I read it when I was 16. I think I couldn't put it down.
Yeah. Nice. Definite page turner.
Yes, real page turner. Something that makes you think a lot. So looking now at some useful phrases when talking about books.
Yeah, so these phrases you can use for any book, I suppose. But here we're talking about them in relation to 1984.
Mm-hmm.
So the central character, the main protagonist, you'd use these phrases in fiction.
Yeah.
But yeah, in George Orwell's 1984, it's Winston Smith.
Yes.
So he's a person the story follows.
Exactly. He's the central character, the main character as well. You could say you could change those central protagonist, main character.
Yeah, true.
Orwell immerses himself in the story of a futuristic world.
Okay. So to immerse, a verb, it means generally if you're going in water.
Yeah.
So if you're going in the sea, or if you're going in the swimming pool, and you go beneath the water, so you're completely covered.
Yeah.
So if you're immersing yourself in a story, you're getting really deep into the story.
Absolutely, very good. 1984 is an entertaining and poignant read. A little bit of pronunciation practice there. Poignant.
Poignant, nice. Yeah,
I like that. It's a good word.
That's a very awkward word.
Poignant.
Very good.
Yes. Poignant. What is poignant?
I suppose it's similar to profound.
Yeah.
Makes you think about something, makes you reflect on something in a way that's relevant, maybe to today's society.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's generally profound, important, unusual.
Yes, very good. And Orwell draws out the reader's sympathy for the hopeless relationship between Winston and Julia. So in 1984, for anyone who hasn't read the book, the main protagonist is in a dystopian world where the government watches everything you do, and he tries to start a relationship with a woman called Julia. But obviously, that's very difficult when you are observed all the time.
So it's mainly a political book, but he makes the politics more relevant to the reader, makes the politics seem more important by having this romance juxtaposed with the political situation.
Fantastic, yeah.
So it makes the politics more human.
Yes, very good word there, juxtaposed.
So when two things are very different, but seen next to each other.
Yeah, to highlight the difference between them. Yeah. The characters are three-dimensional, or rounded, or well-developed. Yes.
So it means, similar to what I said earlier, they're not boring.
Yes.
Essentially, they're characters you want to read about.
And you can imagine these people actually existing. They're not unbelievable in some way. I think is very important for a book, like we said.
Yeah. So Winston and Julia have their weaknesses, although there is nothing wrong with a flawed protagonist. A flawed protagonist.
Yes. A flawed protagonist. A protagonist who has some characteristics that are not perfect. So this is something that became popular, I believe, around the time of Robinson Crusoe, the Daniel Defoe classic.
Okay.
That Robinson Crusoe is seen as one of the first protagonists who is human, who is not Odysseus or
not a hero.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's not an infallible hero.
Nice.
So yeah, I think very interesting to have a flawed protagonist. Helps us to relate to the character as humans as well. Okay. And maybe finally,
it gave me the impression that the ending was devoid of hope and tragic. So something gives you the impression, it means that you feel a certain way.
Yes.
So it gave me the impression that this was true. I felt that was true.
Absolutely, yeah. Fantastic. So we're coming up to the end of our webinar today. It's been very nice spending this time with you guys and talking about books.
Yeah, it's been a nice hour. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can keep on tuning in. There should be more teachers for the next hour. Yes, there will be another 10 to 13 in the next hour. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Okay. All the best. Bye-bye. Bye.